Good everyone, welcome to this video. Today we have a review on the AMX-13-M24, which I'm nicknaming the Frankenstein Scout. Now that sounds a bit of a cliche sort of name because more people have already made Frankenstein memes of this thing, but I don't care. I'm just calling it the Frankenstein Scout. So I've covered the history of this thing briefly, and well, I mentioned it again in the chat of this battle thanks to a guy I actually met in the battle, and he was asking about the tank. So I'll put the chat window on for you. So the AMX-13-M24 is one of the new premium tanks thanks to patch 1.99, and I have to agree this is certainly the better of the two. Now that may come as a shock because obviously I love Shermans, but there's a couple of flaws with the M4 hybrid which I don't agree with, which I'll explain that in that review. So the AMX-13-M24 is essentially what happens when the French government don't have the turret ready for the AMX, and well, they had a surplus of M24 turrets. I mentioned this in the chat as well, but even so, just thought I'd mention it now. So they basically decided, okay, let's take the turrets of these M24s off and put them on our new AMX, and well, here you go. Now, there are a couple of things that you trade in this result, and that is number one, engine power. Now, it feels roughly in terms of acceleration about the same as a Chaffee, but it just struggles to get into the higher gears, is what I've noticed. The Chaffee can get there not too badly at all, but this thing just doesn't seem like it. However, this thing is now lighter thanks to that, so this may just get there quicker. It depends on the road and the terrain, to be honest. When it comes to the actual vehicle itself, you do trade a couple of things. One, you trade the stabilizer, and two, you trade a reverse gear. The reverse gear is only 4 miles an hour, which is not great. It's certainly not the worst, but it's certainly not the greatest. And the lack of stabilization on this turret really affects this vehicle. This is due to the suspension and the weight of the turret. Additionally, this is also compensated because of the positioning of the turret. As you may notice, the turret is actually placed towards the rear of this vehicle. This makes it a bit back heavy, and the suspension doesn't seem to like this. And it makes this thing a little bit too heavy in the back, so when you come into a stop, you may realize that the tank just shakes and shakes and shakes. That's just how it is. If you had the stabilizer, that may be preventable to some extent, but remember, in a Chaffee, you only get vertical stabilization due to the gyroscopic stabilizer, but you don't get that in this. So, how to play this thing? Well, I'm going to be showing that in the battle, but even so, I would actually argue this is the better vehicle. For 1150G, you're getting a cheaper vehicle, and you're getting a more versatile vehicle, in more ways than one. Because the AMX-13-M24, whilst you only get 2 new tanks to grind this patch, it's certainly the better one to do it in because, well, it's an AMX. Personally, if we just jump over to the Italians, because obviously I'm going to be reviewing the hybrid next. My personal argument would be to be putting the Talisman on either the M4 Tipo, the Breda, or even the 7546 M43 tank destroyer. If you want to go a little lower, the P40 or the P40 medium tank or the AB40 armored car, well, 43 armored car, I should say. But anyway, we're not here to discuss the Italians, we're here to discuss the French. Now, obviously, around this BR, you don't tend to have many premiums to pick from. You only have the B1 Tour and the AMX, and then obviously Talisman choices. There's quite a few. Obviously, I'm still researching the M4A4, which I've almost got that. But I'm doing this review a little early in case there's any micro patches. But if you don't like the playstyle of the AMX, and after you've test driven it, there are still a good few options here. If you want a nice scout, I would actually recommend the M3A Stuart or the Crusader. These two tend to be pretty good. For your medium tanks, you can go for your M4A1 or M4A3. For your tank destroyer, you can go for your M10, and for your premium, well, your so I say heavy tank, you can go for your B1 Biz. This tends to be the better choices. Well, these are better choices than the AMX. However, the AMX is more versatile because it has a Chaffee turret. And the Chaffee turret can actually bounce some of the lighter rounds. So you're not going to get that with something like a Crusader, and you're not going to get the luxury of the 75 with a Stuart. But anyway, I've waffled on a bit too much. Let's have a look at what this tank can do in a battle, shall we? But like I say, I'm nicknaming this thing the Frankenstein Scout. Because, well, it's something out of... If you've never watched the films, like the Frankenstein films, it's great film to watch, I've got to admit. But as soon as I saw this tank, I actually thought it was photoshopped. The guy you're going to see in chat asking about the tank is GG Thailand. He seemed like a nice chap. He was just confused by the tank, as you can probably imagine. It's certainly a special vehicle. That I do have to say. Okay, first of all, I'm just going to cut down the sound a little bit, because I like to play on higher volume than I do for my recording, and I keep forgetting to turn it down. So let's get on the move. So obviously I start moving, and well, I immediately get interrupted by Gaijin spawning mechanics. Thanks. But as you can tell, low to medium acceleration isn't too bad. It gets up to about the 26 region pretty quickly. I've got to give it that. It is fast at accelerating. But as you can tell, the suspension is just complete crap. I mean, up here it's fine, but I actually put the cruise control on there because I just felt like it. I couldn't be bothered to keep my W finger on my finger on the W key just to keep the tank going. It is at this point where GG Thailand is starting to fire its machine guns at me, and I thought, oh great, I'm going to have to deal with a Muppet. But it turns out to not be the case. As you're going to see in the chat, he's actually going to be pretty confused by it, which you can imagine. I mean, this thing is a special kind of vehicle, that's for certain. Now what you notice in here is that I've turned the front of the vehicle behind cover, and I'm only exposing the turret. Obviously, I'm actually scouting it, well, trying to scout at this point. But essentially, this is actually how I recommend to play this tank. The reason for it is because the vehicle's, for its size, is actually quite long, and the fact is that you can't really stick your front out without having your driver, your engine, or your transmission taken out. So at this point, I noticed GG Thailand actually looking at me. And also, here's a bug with just how screwed Gaijin's replays are. The skin on his tank is actually showing us the Italian Chaffee, but that's the Chinese Chaffee. So I stopped here to just have a little chat with him, just to tell him about the tank and everything. He says it looks like a nightmare, which you can understand that. But I just say to him they had a surplus of M24 turrets, etc. But obviously he's never seen the tank, so I can't say I blame him for being so surprised. But I'm obviously trying to scout, but as you can tell, this team is getting absolutely creamed. And after explaining the history to the guy, we eventually find an R3 just over here. He's actually going to survive the whole game because, well, reasons. R3s are just so weird. And they, yeah, in my R3 they seem to tank 50, well, they don't seem to tank 50 kills. Obviously he's starting to fire at me here, and I wasn't sure if the turret could take the shots, but it can. It can actually take the R3's rounds at that range. I aimed that shot way too low there. This is one thing I'm still adjusting to. The sights. So as you may have noticed, the sights on this vehicle aren't great, but if you're scouting, you don't really need great sights, and within 600 meters, it's actually not that hard to estimate and shoot. Like I say, you can see what I mean by the reverse gear. It's not pleasant, and at the same time, it's not amazing, but it's still going to get you out of trouble, given the fact that I'm telling you to drive the tank like this. And as you can tell, this team is getting absolutely creamed. We've already had quite a few players leave after one death, and yeah, that's not helping us in the slightest, as you can imagine. But me and GG Thailand are actually going to do some pretty good teamwork, and we're going to keep up the pressure on each other, on the enemy team, using our tanks. Because we're light tanks, we're not meant to take punishment. So I scout that flak bus there, and a I-16 comes into rocket, not that vehicle. He rockets a Panzer IV, which was next to the flak bus, But the flak bus is soon nailed by, I think it was one of our M10s. And I'm soon to get the assist on that. And we've got an Italian Spitfire up because, well, the enemy do, I should really say. Excellent premium, by the way. I still haven't reviewed that. If you want to see a review for that, I'll do that. That's for certain. Just let me know. But as you can tell, I'm looking around, I'm trying to keep an eye out and everything, but the thing is that that was a poorly aimed shot. The thing is that sometimes, well, for a start, the assist hasn't shown up in the replay because, well, reasons. But I have to say, like, fair enough, that was an unlucky shot, and I don't know how that didn't barrel him at least, but logic. The fact is that this tank is cheaper, and in my personal opinion, better than the M4 Hybrid. I'll show you why when that review comes around. I promise you this. Whilst the M4 Hybrid can work, I still prefer this thing over it. So at this point, I start putting down some smoke, which M4 Hybrid don't get this, and this thing also gets smoke shells. And I decided to get my new ally, shall we say, and get him on the move, because, well, we're being pinned down, we're being MG'd, we're being shot at, we need to move. We're light tanks, we're not built to take damage, and we're not built to really be engaging in dogfights for Panzer IVs, are we? Because that Panzer IV takes a shot at us, but I make a very poorly aimed shot here. I apply the brakes, but then I still fire. Shouldn't have done that. But because of the small height of the hull, and obviously the turret sticking out like a sore thumb, you can actually use it to a pretty good extent, to the point where enemies like him don't even notice you. Kill number 1. I know it took nearly 7 minutes for me to get a kill, and we've only got 3 minutes of the battle left, but trust me, it's certainly the kind of thing I do in light tanks. I actually wasn't that far off with that shot. I was off by about 100 meters, which, for an estimate shot, I don't consider that to be too bad. But as you can tell, this entire team is pretty much dead. We're reduced to AA at this point, and a couple of light tanks. Obviously me, my new ally, and another AMX. I scout that Marder, but he doesn't die. And a Panzer IV-H is trying to spawn camp, but he turns his armor just at the right moment for me to get a nice side shot. Kill number 2. But in a moment, I think it's him actually, that tank we just killed. I think it's him or someone else. There's going to be a pretty funny moment, which... was it him actually? I'm just going to quickly check. Yes, it was him. Just watch what he does to try and get a revenge kill, because, well, he comes back for a classic revenge kill, because, yes, there are still assholes who actually still do that to light tanks, because they're that desperate. Luckily, the AMX's armor is just enough. I mean, at the most, it's 40mm thick, and that's on the front transmission plate. That's not going to save you. But if you play a light tank right, you don't need your armor. I mean, the armor on the turret is certainly nice. Chinu was actually paying attention there, and he saw me at the last second, but I went for the turret just to disable his ability to fire back. And, well, we had enough shrapnel to actually take out the entire, well, most of the crew in the tank, killing the actual vehicle. So he comes back for his revenge kill, does a day Taurus, and he's still not dead. Now he is. And that's my final kill. He did a day Taurus, and yet the game didn't count him as a kill, so I just MG'd him with the 30 cal, and I got the kill for it. So, thanks for that, buddy. Always helps towards grinding the M4A4. Yeah, obviously, I'm making sure my new friend here is still alive and everything. But we're being strafed now by a Spitfire, and we're about to be strafed by BA-65. But as you can tell, we're down to 2 AA in the spawn, and, well, this team is completely gone. I mean, I've got me and my new friend here, but at the same time, we're not going to do shit. I mean, they've got Panzer IVs, they've got Pumas, they've got air support, and they've also got a Flak Panzer 38. There's not a lot we can really do. Now at this point, this is where it started to get a bit dodgy. I reckon he must have seen my ally and not seen me, so he was MGing our position to try and give us away. Because at first I was confused. I was like, how the fuck has he seen us? We was behind a hill, but that's probably the best explanation I can think of. But at this point, BA-65 comes in. Unfortunately, I don't get the kill on him, but he ate some Mardus, and well... Cool guys don't look at explosions until, well, I mean, I did technically look at the explosion if you want to go that far. But I have to agree, for 1150G, you are certainly getting your money's worth out of this tank. It's a great scout, it's a nice little support tank, and, well, it helps you grind out your French tech tree nicely. And, well, it got me my D2, and it's soon to get me my M4A4, so there you go. But anyway, I'm going to let you guys off. I really do recommend this tank to you. Just watch that reverse gear. Sometimes it might just get you killed because of how slow it is in reverse. But I would certainly advise this over something like the B1 Tur. The problem is with the B1 Tur is that it gets down to fight the Sweden APDS, man. At least for this thing, you'll rarely see that, and even then, it's a light tank. You're getting hit anyway, you're being penetrated most of the time. But anyway, I'll see you all on the next one.